As I see it, there are basically five major points that need to be in place for a musician to have a really positive experience playing for a dance. And this is just based on the player's perspective. Obviously, a dancer is going to have a different set of criteria. For me, as a melody player, the band, as in specifically the backup, really is the dance right there. Like, if you don't have good backup, you don't have a contra dance band. There are lots of great melody players in the world. Unfortunately, there are very few good backup players, but the backup is the contra dance. And so if I'm lucky enough to have a good band with a good guitar or whatever, if it's bass or whoever else is the backup, then I'm going to have, that's the first major point. So the second point is the caller, and I really enjoy working with a caller who not only has cool dances and they know how to mix up the evening so it doesn't have 4 dances in a row with a lot of circles and up the hall and back or whatever it might be. If they have a good programming sense, that's important, and are very clear with their instructions so that the dancers catch on right away. But almost equally important, are they interactive with the band? I've seen a lot of callers that the band is just kind of like a background thing that, oh, I guess it's sort of a necessary evil, oh, just do that thing that you do, because they're so focused on their own calling that they are not sort of interactive and working with the band to make the best partnership possible. So I like a lot of discussion with the caller either before the dance begins or right before each individual dance, as to the nature of the selections they're looking for. Sometimes they'll be really specific about saying, oh, can you do a really smooth set of jigs here, or can you do something that's really barn burning here, or can you do a rolling start on this one? And that's really great to have some kind of discussion. I'll often look at their dance card, because they'll have their whole book of cards, and I'll glance over it, and if I see specific components of the dance that are kind of suggestive of certain type of phrasing in the music, then I'll try and remember that as I'm beginning the music and try to play to that particular dance, and that's really important to kind of have this interactive discussion. Also, sometimes there might be something about the dance card that does not look out of the ordinary, and yet there's something that they know from experience. There'll be this sort of magic moment at, let's say, the top of B2 or something, where oh, it really has a big inertia of swooping from one partner to another or something like that. So can you keep that in mind? So we'll have this little discussion. That's really, really great. And that also they give me some license to actually change the dance. So, for example, maybe they're feeling like they want to call the dance out at maybe 2 more times, and it happened that I wanted to do 4 more times, because I was trying to do something musical, like a big crescendo or something like that. And so they'll give me the old 2, and I'll do no, and 4, yes, okay, and this is on the fly, right? And it's kind of on that same subject of the changing the dance, is that a really good caller will keep in mind, like when I'll whisper really quickly, I'll say, we're going to do 3 reels. And so then they're thinking to themselves, okay, 3 reels, and they're listening for that and paying attention to the band and really enjoying the switch. Oh, that was good, and then you feel like, oh, the caller cares, and so you're playing. And then they notice when you've switched to that 3rd reel that you declared you were going to play. Oh, they've just switched to the 3rd reel, so I'll let them really play that. I'm not going to call them out right away. I'll let them play that to their heart's content and let them work the dance floor. That's really great. A lot of callers who happen to be less sort of in tune with what the band is up to, they'll just call it out whenever they want, and it happened that maybe you just made a switch of a tune, and or maybe you were just about to make a switch, and they're already 2 or even 1, and you're like, oh no, you know, it's like, now what do we do? Because we were just about to do something exciting and fun, and now they want us just to end? What's up with that? You know, and that's not too much fun. So that is my second point, that the caller really makes a big difference in the enjoyment factor for the musician. Point number 3 would be the sound. This is an often overlooked aspect. It's funny, you know, I have read blogs where dancers will complain about a certain band. Oh, they weren't loud enough, or oh, they were too loud, or and the band, in fact, pretty much has no control. They, you know, as a musician, we set up our front end, meaning our own microphones, our own leads. I think that the old school method is that the musicians would just sort of show up, and whatever microphones happen to be there, provided by the sound guy, you just play, and they put a microphone on you. That's kind of not as desirable as the musician actually working out what type of miking or pickup system is best for their own instrument, and showing up with their own preamps, and so that's the front end. Is everything is provided by the musicians up to the snake. The snake is the main control box, and which then goes back to the mixing panel. And so we will provide our own setup up to the snake, and then it goes from the snake to the sound engineer at the mixing console. At that point, you have no control. I mean, the sound person is out in the room kind of just like twisting knobs and kind of adjusting things. And if they're doing a poor job with changing the EQ, let's say the timbre, the treble, the bass, that kind of thing, or the overall loudness, or that kind of thing, the musician has no control. And often dancers don't understand that, and so they'll be like, I can't hear it, or whatever, or it sounds too screechy or something, and would tend to blame the band. And in fact, the sound guy or woman, it's often a man, but that's critical. And so a sound person who really understands acoustic music and what type of sounds are meaningful for a dancer. Like, you don't want all like like a real kind of a low thumpy thing. You need melody, because this particular genre is a melody driven type of experience. In the old days, there was no percussion, anything like that. It was just melody, and then came in the little bit more of a need to have the backup to give it more of a driving effect. But we do need to hear the melody to be able to hear the phrasing. And so if it's all just thump, 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 that's not so good. Likewise, you know, if it's too shrill, just, you know, just kind of that, very often that E string on the fiddle is like really nasty. That's not so good. There are all kinds of things that a really capable sound person can do to make it a very enjoyable, meaningful experience for the dancer. And of course the gear. I've been to a lot of dances where they just have cobbled together gear that they bought secondhand and, you know, wherever, and that's maybe from the 60s, and it's pretty dire, and that's no fun. So that is the third component. Point number 4 would be the actual dancers themselves. There are certain communities where they respond to different things. I mean, there are communities that want just a very traditional sound, nothing fancy, no improvisation, no funky grooves. They want just like just very foursquare and normal. And there are other communities that they are really tempo sensitive. I remember some of the dances in California where they don't like it too fast, you know, so you'd be wanting to keep it around 108, 112 beats a minute, and you start getting it up around 116, 120, they're really upset by that. But a lot of that is because the demographic is older and they're moving a little slower on the dance floor. A lot of them have bad knees or whatever it might be, And so, yeah, they just complain about the tempo. But out here, for example, out in the East, there's a bit younger demographic, and a lot of fancy, improvised dancing and whatever, and so they often respond to a very vigorous tempo. So that's another illustration. Also, whether the particular community of dancers really understands musically certain approaches. Are they responding to the music just by their gut, or do they know what they're listening to? Often, when it's just by the gut, as in first time, or kind of not been around acoustic music a great deal, they really like a lot of percussion, because that's kind of our pop and rock world. It's very heavy on the percussion thing, and that's kind of a normal sound that people hear just in everyday life. And so then that brings this kind of familiar sound. But other communities who are more excited by what I might call authentic or traditional type of instrumentation and whatnot are not as enamored by percussion. They appreciate a really effective driving beat with the guitarist, and they like a true natural fiddle sound. They enjoy acoustic instruments, basically. So since I'm kind of more, I side a little bit more toward the traditional acoustic than I do the sort of vamped up, popified contra experience. So I'm not as fond personally of a percussion-based band, nor am I as fond personally of an electronic-based type of band. So the sounds that I present I try to find my interest and inventiveness using conventional means. And we'll talk about that shortly. But I try not to resort to a lot of tricks just for the general effect. And there are some dancers who appreciate what I do, and others, they respond a little bit more to some of the other types of bands, and that's fine. There are many tastes, but for me personally, as a performing musician, that is one of the components that makes the dance more enjoyable or less enjoyable. Like, are they actually getting what I do? Do they appreciate what I'm going for? So that would be point number 4. Point number 5 is the bottom line, and that's the pay. I am more of a concert performer. I used to do a ton of contra dances, like when I lived in Seattle and I toured up and down the West Coast. And then more and more, as my concert career got busier and busier, I started doing fewer and fewer of the contra dances for a variety of reasons. Pay is one of those reasons. There are very few models of people in contra dance musician circles who are actually making their living at just contra dance. And so nowadays when I do a contra dance, I usually try to do it on a night when I wouldn't have already scheduled a concert. And so I basically, I'm a full-time professional musician, and so it's important to me to consider the bottom line, and I can't be filling up my schedule with dances that pay $75 or $100. I wouldn't be able to eat, So and unfortunately, there's this kind of like this top ceiling beyond which one would never be able to earn more in the contra dance world, and I prefer to seek out the dances that pay a modicum of a good fee, so one of the considerations is when I can negotiate a split, or there's a sliding scale. The dances that I tend to avoid are those that just have a flat fee and they just pay every musician the same. There should be an incentive built in to the musician's prowess. The better they get and the more devoted the dancers are to that band, I think that should then be rewarded by way of the pay. So so around here there are a number of dances that do go on that model, and I always enjoy those. There will always be the ceiling though, because you consider like how many dancers will fit into a given room. Maybe the most that you could fit into a room would be 250 or whatever, and so then you just work out the mathematics. You know, if people are paying $3 or $7 or whatever they're paying per person, and how many people and how many musicians are being, you know, taking a cut of the pay, and then there's the sound guy and so forth. There's a lot of fingers in that pie, so there will always be this ceiling. So for that reason, I haven't been doing as many dances. I do still love playing for dances, and it's just that I tend to go nowadays more for the concert format.